Okay.
Good evening. Welcome to the September 2024 meeting of the Historic Conservation Commission. I'm Craig Evans. I'm the vice chair.
I have to move it closer.
Okay. I'm the vice chair, and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. Gary Lader, our chairman, is at a funeral. Ordinance for information. It is the purpose and intent of the City of Bethlehem to promote, enhance, and preserve historic resources and traditional community character for the education, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through preservation, protection, and regulation of buildings in areas of historic interest or importance within the city, which have been determined to be of local, state, or national significance. The way the meeting will unfold is the applicants will be taken in order. After identifying the project address and the presenters, our historic officer, Jeff Long, will provide a background on the building and any recommendations. At that time, the applicant will present their project and plan. The board will then address the project, allow public comment, ultimately create a motion to approve as presented, approve with modifications, table the project with clear recommendations, or deny the project with reasons for the denial and changes or improvements which would result in a positive recommendation. For public comment, there is a 3-minute time limit, and comments must be specific to the attributes of the building only. Speakers are to announce themselves with their name and address before speaking. The HCC is a recommending board, and the results of our meeting will be presented to City Council, and their vote will be binding. Please do not forget to secure your permit from the permit office on the first floor of City Hall before you begin a project. Above all, I remind everyone to conduct themselves in a civil manner and always use a civil tone. The commission is here to help you with your project. We are a group of volunteers who are dedicated to historic preservation and restoration of older buildings in Bethlehem and beyond. If any commission members have a conflict with any of the application on tonight's agenda, please make note of that at this time. Okay. We'll ask everyone to please sign in. There's a tablet or paper sign-in sheet on the table up there. There's a 45-minute time limit on new proposals for large projects. Upon the second visit to the Commission for large-scale projects, the following will be required: an architectural plan with lot lines, setbacks, defined architectural features, and all measurements, including the amount of floors, foundation, walls, parapet, window sizes, and the like. A complete set of elevations of the building with streetscape drawings showing the new structure in context with the surrounding buildings is also required. With that, we will begin. I will introduce the members of the board, the commission, who are here. To my left, Desiree Kratzer, a resident of the Mount Airy District. To my right, Todd Chambers with business interest in the South Side, and Mike Simonson, Chief Building Inspector for the City of Bethlehem. And at the other table over there is Jeff Long, our City Historic Officer. So with that, we will begin tonight's agenda dealing with 330 East 4th Street. That's represented. And Jeff, if you would provide a summary, please.
Sure, thank you. This structure, located at the corner of Polk Street and East 4th Street, is a detached 2.5-story, 3-bay, brick masonry and stucco dwelling with a front-facing gable, small arched windows in the front gable, large roof dormers on the east and west with paired double-hung windows, built-in gutters, and a wide yellow brick partially enclosed front porch with a clay tile roof. The main house dates from circa 1890, includes 1/1 double-hung windows, and is classical revival in style. An earlier wood frame front porch was replaced in circa 1920 with a brick masonry porch that is Spanish revival in style, with brick arches supported by masonry piers, a brick balustrade, and a clay tile roof. The house has a low concrete wall on both street fronts, but has lost the associated wrought iron fence over time. The large, detached, single-story, multi-bay, brick masonry garage with flat roof located at the rear of the property is considered non-contributing to the Historic Conservation District because it was constructed after the district's period of significance, which is circa 1880 to 1950, when South Bethlehem experienced dramatic development. Proposed alterations. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing single-family dwelling and the rear garage to construct a 3.5-story mixed-use structure with commercial space on the first floor and 4 two-bedroom dwelling units above. The applicant is returning to HCC for additional review of requested supplemental information. The guideline citations I used for my assessment of the current application included the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9, and I'll quote it because it's relevant to the 2 other agenda items as well. New additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy the historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and would be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, as well as massing, to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. Also reference the entire ordinance. Mr. Evans quoted the introduction or the preamble to that at the beginning of tonight's meeting. And also the Historic Conservation Commission design guidelines. Yet again, because this is relevant to pretty much all 3 agenda items, I'm going to quote specific components. This one time, I will simply reference them in the subsequent 2 agenda items. Relevant sections concerning demolition, which are found on page 19 of the guidelines, state that HCC encourages, quote, an evaluation of the significance of the building in the historic district, and all attempts to reuse a historic building be exhausted prior to considering demolition, end quote. Continues that HCC will not recommend approval for demolition unless, quote, proposed demolition involves a non-significant building where the applicant has demonstrated that they have exhausted all other options and they will suffer undue economic hardship, end quote. So that's concerning demolition. And because a couple people have contacted me, that is the only time in the ordinance or our guidelines reference economic hardship, is in reference to demolition. Never references, for example, if you require wood windows and they say we can't afford them. That's not what economic hardship is. Specific only on the page in reference to demolition. It continues concerning new construction, pages 8 through 12 of the same guidelines. HCC encourages new construction that, quote, preserves the cohesive ambiance of the Historic Conservation District with compatible, sympathetic, and contemporary construction, matches the setbacks of adjacent buildings on the streetscape, and has compatible siting, S-I-T-I-N-G, not siding, proportion, size and scale, form, materials, fenestration, roof configuration, details, and finishes, end quote. To my evaluation, the effects on the district and recommendations. Excuse me. The Certificate of Appropriateness application indicates the intent to demolish the existing single-family dwelling and detached garage to construct a 3.5-story mixed-use structure with commercial space on the first floor and 4 two-bedroom dwellings above, along with associated on-site parking and a dumpster enclosure. This applicant initially presented to HCC on July 15, 2024, with a design that appears to be the same as the current proposal. At that time, the applicant was informed that Article 1740 of the Bethlehem City Ordinance defines contributing structures within South Bethlehem Historic Conservation District as buildings constructed during the district's period of significance, circa 1880 to 1950. And because this dwelling was constructed in 1890 or thereabouts, it is considered contributing to the district and therefore significant. Upon review of the provided supplemental items, the HCC determined this structure exhibits high level of historical integrity and also completes the end of a full city block of similar 2.5-story brick masonry dwelling structures dating from roughly the same time period, so its loss to demolition would be significant not only to the existing streetscape, but also to the overall district. According to relevant design guidelines, the HCC does not recommend approval for demolition of significant structures. Rather, an evaluation of the building's significance within the district is encouraged, and confirmation is needed that all attempts to reuse the historic building have been exhausted prior to considering demolition. In anticipation, at the last meeting, the applicant provided a supplemental structural evaluation report with accompanying photographs that illustrate the existing poor interior conditions. However, there was no estimated cost for the needed rehabilitation, and there were no accompanying property appraisal. During the resulting discussion, all parties agreed that the existing rear garage structure is non-contributing to the district, so HCC could recommend its demolition. However, HCC expressed concern about approving demolition of the main dwelling because the applicant did not satisfy the requirement that all attempts to reuse the existing contributing structure had been exhausted prior to considering demolition, nor did the applicant demonstrate all other options had been exhausted and they would suffer undue economic hardship. HCC inquired if the applicant had explored retaining and rehabilitating the existing shell of the existing structure while configuring its interior. The applicant responded that retaining the existing structure would result in a single-family dwelling, while the city requires first-floor commercial use. At that time, Mr. Simonson noted that there were no storefronts along this city block, so the city would be willing to collaborate with the applicant to seek the needed variance. HCC members also recalled various commercial tenants elsewhere within the district that do not need traditional storefronts. HCC concluded the discussion by encouraging the applicant to study such scenarios in more detail before returning with the resulting design solutions, along with a property appraisal and the informed analysis to satisfy the requirement of undue economic hardship. The current application includes what appears to be the same design solution previously presented to HCC, along with the requested additional information. For reference, sheet A1 includes a scale drawing of the existing structure as required by the application. Previously, we didn't have a scale drawing, so they did provide that as well. It also includes a scale drawing of the adjacent twin structure at 326 to 328 East 4th Street, so immediately to the west of this structure. And that was requested. It really requests a streetscape. They're giving you the first building of that streetscape. And that helps to illustrate the new structure being proposed within the historical context. HCC's previous request to explore retaining and rehabilitating the exterior shell of the existing structure while reconfiguring its interior is not being presented tonight, so a discussion is warranted. The applicant also provided a property appraisal dated July 31st, 2024, resulting in an appraised value of approximately $100,000, along with an accompanying work proposal to rehabilitate the existing structure totaling approximately $375,000. Those are the two elements you requested at your last meeting. As previously stated, the rear garage is non-contributing to the district, so HCC can recommend its demolition. However, discussion is warranted based on the new details and additional information provided by the applicant before HCC can recommend demolition of the existing dwelling. Should HCC recommend demolition after concluding the applicant will indeed suffer undue economic hardship if required to reuse the existing dwelling, so you could theoretically have two components. You could have approval to demolish, and then you could continue with the proposed design, or you could stop there, come back later. But they did propose a design, so I did do a basic assessment of the design so we can at least have some kind of discussion. The proposed replacement must be assessed according to the Secretary of Interior standards concerning new construction. I quoted from that earlier, as well as relevant design guidelines, which encourage new construction that preserves a cohesive ambiance of the district with compatible, sympathetic, and contemporary construction that matches the setbacks of the adjacent buildings on the streetscape and has compatible siting, proportion, size and scale, form, materials, fenestration, roof configuration, details, and finishes. Based upon the applicant's provided scale drawings, the proposed new construction does not match the setback of the remaining structures along the 300 block of East 4th Street and is therefore inappropriate. There is a site plan I think it's the demolition plan, and it shows the proposed new project would sit tight to the public right-of-way. All the other structures on that block sit back. They're not included on the on that site drawing. An appropriate design would set back the front facade to align with the facades of the existing contributing structures. It would include a single-story front porch, and it would integrate a low retaining wall with a fence at the public right-of-way that aligns with the walls at all the adjacent properties to maintain the current streetscape. The proposed design inappropriately lowers the height of the existing front lawn even with the public right-of-way. An appropriate design solution would retain the existing elevated property height and site the new construction to match the elevated siding of all the adjacent properties. The proposed new construction is 3.5 stories high and measures approximately 30 feet wide by 56 feet deep, which is wider and significantly deeper than the adjacent dwellings along East 4th Street. The provided scale drawings indicate a soffit height of the proposed structure is approximately 28 feet, and the peak of the hip roof is approximately 41 feet, confirming that the size and the scale of the proposed structure is considerably larger than the 2.5-story historic structures along this block of East 4th Street and is therefore inappropriate. The hip roof of the proposed structure is an uncommon feature within the district. We've had a couple proposals in the past, and you've requested them to revisit hip roofs, and oftentimes they will do that. It's just not a common feature for this district. So a more appropriate roof form would be explored as part of any kind of subsequent design phase. The applicant also includes a partial scale drawing of the neighboring structure at the 400 block of East 4th Street, so standing in front of it to the east or to the left. At first glance, the applicant's design proposal seems to relate proportionally to that structure. However, a closer investigation, and I've done several walk-bys, reveal that the neighboring corner property is actually an empty lot. So the building depicted is not adjacent immediately. There's an empty lot, and then that next building starts. That empty lot serves as a parking lot for the commercial tenant at the next building, which is depicted on the drawing. That structure and all the remaining structures on the 400 block of East 4th Street, they are all indeed 3-story mixed-use masonry structures with corbelled parapets, flat roofs, commercial storefronts, and no front yards. However, that's a very different aesthetic from the row of 2.5-story dwellings along the 300 block. So you go from the block where they're proposing has a very distinct approach, dwellings, 2.5 stories, elevated, porches, setbacks. The next block pulls all of them to the front, has commercial use on the street facade, has a flat facade and a flat roof. And no common retaining walls. So I didn't put it in my assessment. Theoretically, their proposal would fit much better on the next block, to be honest. It has many more of the qualities of the next block, and really none of the qualities of the existing block. So with that comparison, it reinforces that the current design proposal is inappropriate for this specific city block. The proposed scale drawing, the provided scale drawings of the proposed structure begin to address such design concerns as materials, including brick, lap siding, asphalt roof shingles, awning, as well as fenestration. There's storefronts, so 6/1 double hung windows, Juliet balconies, etc. But no specifics. And at this phase, we wouldn't want them because we want to walk them through that if you choose to go forward. I just want to call attention to subsequent reviews would include product specifications, cut sheets, and potentially samples of those suggested materials. I strongly encourage the applicant to review all the relevant design guidelines, recommending appropriate materials and finishes, as well as any kind of details for storefronts, as well as signage within the district.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Would you like to address some of the concerns that we've outlined in the description of the project?
Yeah. So, I do have a as-is appraisal, which Jeff did mention was valued at $100,000, and I had an appraisal done as if I fixed up the building according to my estimate, which I have a full broken down estimate at roughly 372,000. And the appraisal came back at 275,000 at the value of the house fixed up. So that's that. And then on the same block and across the street, that's also on the 300 block, there is storefront and commercial buildings that are right on the right-of-way line. There's a Touchstone right across the street, and there's 324 East 4th Street, which is also on the 300 block, that doesn't have a front porch and also sits right on the right-of-way.
And I believe it postdates the date of our district. That's why I did not assess it, because it
Okay.
would not conform to our guidelines currently. So I guess I should have mentioned that there is one anomaly on that block, but because it would never meet our guidelines, I didn't feel it was necessary to
Okay.
reference. So I apologize for if there's a misunderstanding.
And then we also, we tried to go through some of the options I know you guys mentioned, to see if we could cut in a storefront in the front of the building. I had my architect, Mark Ortland from Christian Architects. He came with me. We looked at the building and looked for other options of attaching. If we were to cut into the front, it's just not going to work out. If you want to explain.
I need to identify myself. My name is Mark Ortwine. I'm with Christian Architects. My address is 10 South Main Street, Nazareth, Pennsylvania. Nick did ask me to address that issue of trying to use the existing first floor basement level as our new first floor. The ceiling height down there is 6 feet. So to drop that, typically you want a 9-foot ceiling for a commercial space down below. That'll bring you about 42 inches below the sidewalk, and that would make it almost impossible to get accessibility in there. You would maintain that floor height, try to maintain those floor heights. The other issue is you have to underpin all the walls because you'd be digging far lower than the existing footings. So that was one issue.
And then another issue attaching to the building, we'd get too far into the parking lot, so we wouldn't be able to have the amount of parking spaces we would need. And then on top of that, renovating the existing building is just, I did attach a lot of pictures. The main problem with the structure, and it's also in the appraisals report. So in the basement, the foundation is very, very poor. A lot of water leakage. It's a stone foundation. All the joists that are pocketed into the stone foundation are all rotting away. And a lot of the joists are undersized. And then the brick structure from the inside, I also attached a lot of pictures of that from what's already exposed because the box gutters look like they've been compromised for a long time. It's just leaking and deteriorating the brick, which is the actual structure of the building. So that would all have to get, repointed, restructured. A lot of it's very soft. So to fix the building properly, probably have to do a new foundation on the inside of the building, on the inside of the stone masonry wall, dig a footer, build a 6-foot high wall to be able to anchor sill plates into, and then from there, reframe a whole new structure, basically building a whole new building. I'm sure if I went to go pull permits, they're going to require engineering structural drawings, and that's most likely what I'd have to do. Just almost building a brand new building, except a little harder when you're dealing with existing. Have any questions?
Comments?
No, I just quick question on your second drawing. I'll have more. The first one that came to my head. Grading and utility drawing. You have the property going right up to the edge of the corner. So the proposed in your drawing, in your picture, I'm sorry. Are you taking it right to that small retaining wall, that knee wall there, or
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
you're taking it all the way out to here?
Yep, to where that little retaining wall is now, yeah.
So just be aware, if this project is to go further, you're going to have to include sight lines in that because you're at a corner. So you're going to kind of be, if you're right up against the edge, I see you have the corner marked in your plan. That's going to have to be,
And again, I know we're really focusing on the demolition, but
right.
we're starting to talk about some of these issues if we do move forward with the proposed building. But we had preliminarily talked about the need for windows or things like that on that low floor in that corner, so that we do acknowledge that we're in that site.
Right. I'm just saying if your primary purpose tonight is to focus on the demo, we'll do so and look at the structure and stuff at a later date. Then.
But I don't think you can consider the whole plan if there's gaps,
Right.
like a structure in the site triangle.
Yeah.
You know,
We
it
don't
just doesn't,
mind if the demolition does get approved, we don't mind accommodating,
yeah,
you know,
it
the new
doesn't
structure.
seem like a viable project when you come at us with that. I mean, you could get a variance, but,
Yeah.
you know, that's probably another hurdle.
Yeah. I mean, we can always accommodate the new structure to fit some of those requirements if needed.
I think what we heard from Jeff that it sounds like maybe the board would feel more comfortable if we actually move this building back a little bit from the property, from the front right of way line anyway, which would certainly alleviate a little bit of that site triangle issue.
I think that would definitely be the case.
Yep.
Part of the issue is a concept one of its integration with the rest of that block, as Jeff defined the difference between that this 300 block being essentially residential with the one anomaly of the church gift store. And the next block being much more commercial style. And the ambiance, the sense of community that comes out of that row of houses and the retaining wall and so on that street are significant. So I think that your consideration of setback is important. Desiree,
I agree with that, with the setback. I think that will allow for, to continue a more neighborhood.
Now, there is across the street which is also the 300 block, there is a commercial, I think there's 2 or 3 directly across the street, and they sit right on the property line. It would kind of blend in with that. And I understand the next block over is more of that commercial, but on that other corner, I feel like those 2 corners would look really nice together. They'd both be commercial buildings with a storefront.
Can you tell us more about the other options you've explored for this piece of property, please?
Yeah, so if we do want to go through zoning, obviously for multi-unit, the one option was creating the commercial. So the basements, I know Mark said it was 6 foot. I think I got 5'10". The basement's very, very low headroom. Even when you come down the steps to go into the basement, I mean, you have to like really duck to get down there. So if we wanted to create space on that first floor, technically basement right now, because of the low headroom, we would have to cut down into the floor, and then we'd have to anchor under the existing foundation. It's just not feasible to do that. It'd almost be impossible.
You're suggesting putting the retail in the basement level?
Well, because the basement is walkout on the front because of the grade of the property. So if we actually did it on the first floor, you would have the retail or storefront. You'd walk up several steps to get to the first floor. Because of the way the grade is, it's more walkout, daylight in the front, and then the basement's a full basement in the back.
How tall is the basement in the back?
It's the same height. It's
the
about
same
6
height?
foot. Yeah, it's about 6 foot.
I guess when I asked about options, I was more referring to, you want to create a multi-family development on this site,
Yeah.
right? to me, there's other options instead of just demolishing this house and proposing a 4-unit building in its place. You know, could you renovate the existing house and add on to it to accommodate some more units? That would be one. Could you preserve the house and construct a 4-unit building elsewhere on the site, maybe towards
So
the
the
rear?
parking would be an issue. We wouldn't be able to fit the parking. Right now, the building we're proposing isn't much deeper than the current building. So we would be able to fit the amount of parking spots we would need for the units.
So are you sure you need parking at this site
Yes. Yeah, off-street parking.
to meet the zoning requirement?
Correct,
What
yes.
district is it in?
Um,
Sorry, limited commercial.
Okay.
Oh, CL, I thought it was CB.
Okay. Yeah, in the CB you don't. So that's
Oh,
why
okay.
I'm driving at
Yeah.
that question.
So the parking would be required. And then just to renovate that building, like I said, it would need so much renovation just from the foundation up. It just wouldn't be worth it. And then, I mean, the longer this building sits, it's just going to deteriorate. I can't really see anyone wanting to really mess with it. I mean, it was just neglected for way too. The box gutters, I think, is what started the main issue. They must have been compromised for several years. Every time it rains, water just pours down those walls on the inside of the structure.
Do you have any idea the last time the building was occupied?
I'm not sure.
7 years ago.
7 years ago?
The person was living, it was a hoarder home. The person was living in there. I found out from the police and the fire department when they wanted to take him to the hospital, they had to bring 7, 8 guys in there to crawl over everything to get to the second floor, take him out. He's in a nursing home on Shinnersville Road.
So we went through about 7 dumpsters worth
Just
of
to
just
clean the
garbage to
house.
get.
That's why your
Yeah,
dumpster
it was-
cost is
Yeah,
so high.
we spent so much money just sending guys there to clean out the house. It was a lot of garbage. I understand. I really don't understand how he was living there.
Yeah, same thing, no utilities. You could probably
No,
condemn.
we didn't have the pre-sale inspection yet, but I'm sure if the pre-sale inspector did come, he'd probably have a monster list and probably be condemned.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's why I was just
100%.
asking Mike.
Yeah,
what the
yeah,
city
100% they
process
were
is for
condemned.
condemning.
Yeah. I
Definitely
mean, as soon
would
as
be.
he opened that door, he would definitely condemn the property.
Yeah, there's not a chance anybody
Yeah.
could live here.
I mean, we could get a pre-sale
these
inspector out
conditions.
there to
It was
Check
supposed
it
to
out.
be tomorrow,
the pre-sale inspection. Yeah.
but it got postponed to October 31st.
Other comments?
So, I think everybody's feelings on exploring the options and demolition in this group anyway.
Yeah, I understand.
I think, from my perspective, personally, there's some elements I think that you could alter in the proposed structure to make it more appealing to this board
Okay.
in terms of bringing it back in line with, say, the porches on the adjacent properties. I don't think it's super feasible to add a porch if you're going to have
Commercial. That's gonna
Commercial
be an
on the
issue with
first floor.
porch, Yeah.
commercial on the first floor is required by zoning.
Yep.
Okay, so we want to keep that. I do think the hip roof line is a little bit problematic as well. So
Fine, we could
We'll
change
go to a
that.
gable. Yeah.
yeah, a gable or even a low slope roof,
Yeah.
which is similar. Are you planning that attic being occupied?
No,
Some dormers
no.
up there. So, I mean, it might be more cost effective anyway to build it with a low slope roof
Flat roof or something.
and do
Okay.
a cornice detail like is on the 400 block.
Okay.
And then, of course, the site triangle, you should explore
Okay.
ways to address that, or at least talk with the zoning officer to get, a
Modified.
sense of whether that can be, you can get some relief to that, because I
Okay.
think we would want to know that you could get some relief so we could talk about
Better
your
on the
proposed
Okay,
design,
understand.
right,
Yeah.
in that
Okay.
context.
It is our responsibility as if we in making this decision to recommend or deny or suggest a denial. It's in light of what we see as the replacement structure So it's not just that we would approve demolition.
Mhm.
That's part of our discussion. But in order to create a certificate of appropriateness recommendation, we would need to evaluate the replacement, which at this point, we don't have enough definition on.
So you can recommend demolition without stating anything about specifics of the replacement. Those are two separate motions.
It has
What
been,
you-
however, our practice to look at the replacement.
Of
I
course,
think it'd make it easier for us to
of course.
get comfortable with demolition if we have a
Oh,
good
absolutely.
understanding of what's going
I'm just,
back,
what
right?
the ordinance doesn't allow you to reference the new design in the demolition motion. It does, however, allow you, and you've done in the past, integrate language that requires all reviews, whether they're zoning, planning,
Sure.
further HCC, all those kind of reviews, have to be satisfied before a demolition permit is issued. That you are allowed to integrate into your motion. Just to clarify,
Okay.
is that clear to everybody?
Mhm.
You can't mention, or you could, but you can't stop demolition by mentioning the new design,
Right.
but you can prevent demolition by the caveat that all reviews have to be successfully
that's-
completed.
That's where we are.
Yes,
Right.
so,
So if we were to deny at this point, it's only because we haven't pursued all of the options. However, if we would vote for the demolition, the permit won't be granted until all of the approvals are.
Which is fine. Yeah.
Is that clear? Are we making sense there for you?
Yes, yes.
Is there any public comment at this point? Ready to entertain a motion here?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make a motion to approve the demolition of 330 East 4th Street pending the resubmittal and approval of the proposed two-story structure to go in its place. I'm sorry, three-story. Well, hold on.
It's 3-story from the front. Yeah, it's 3-story from the front, Mike.
Okay, because it says proposed two-story in your drawing.
On
Okay.
the site plan, yeah, it does.
That's where I was pulling it from.
Ah, okay.
According to zoning, it's 2.5 story if they have a full attic. It's considered a
Okay. So you're gonna eliminate that dormer and go with the
That's
flat
the
roof? So
plan,
you
if that's what you
eliminate
guys
that? Okay.
suggest. Yeah, that's fine.
So again, I make a motion to approve the demolition, pending approval of the final design aspects and subsequent approvals through zoning and everything else
Okay.
and all the other processes.
Is there a second?
I second
We'll take a vote on it. Desiree?
Aye.
I vote aye. Todd?
Reluctantly, aye.
And I.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. So now you just got to come back to us with the finished product.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So
ladies and gentlemen.
go to,
Thank you.
go to zoning first, Mike, from here. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Good to see you. Are you here for?
Wow.
Yep, no problem. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Next application is 1304 Spring Street. And I can see that we're represented, so Jeff, if you would give us a summary.
sure, thank you. Building description, period style, and defining features. This residential structure is a detached 2.5-story, 2-bay, wood frame, single-family dwelling with a front-facing gable with original slate roof shingles, projecting planar barge boards supported on wood brackets, wood shingle gable details, wood clapboard siding, and a full front porch with a hip roof. Dating from circa 1885, this house is Queen Anne in style. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing single-family dwelling to construct an approximately 4,100 square foot structure. That was a mistake in the agenda. It's not 41,000 square feet. 4,100 square foot structure containing 4 dwelling units. This review is a continuation from July 15, 2024 HEC meeting. The guideline citations I used for my assessments are the very same ones from the previous agenda item. They include the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9, the Bethlehem Ordinance that created the district, and the Historic Conservation Commission design guidelines concerning demolition as well as new construction. The certificate of appropriateness application indicates the intent to demolish the existing single-family dwelling to construct an approximately 4,100 square foot structure containing 4 dwelling units. This review represents a continuation from July 15, 2024 HCC meeting. Previous certificate of appropriateness application to demolish the existing structure and replace it with an open lawn was presented during HEC during a series of meetings in late 2012 through early 2013. Citing the high level of historical integrity of this contributing structure, as well as concerns of demolition by neglect, and also supported by public comments about the applicant's lack of proper maintenance of this and other historic structures on the overall property, the HCC ultimately recommended that Bethlehem City Council deny the applicant's proposal. Council issued the resulting certificate of appropriateness in February of 2013, supporting HCC's recommendation to deny demolition of the existing historic structure. In late 2019, the applicant returned to HCC with an application proposing to replace the existing slate roof sheathing with GAF slate line asphalt shingles. HCC unanimously supported the applicant's proposal to maintain the existing historic structure by recommending that Bethlehem City Council approve the applicant's proposal. City Council issued a resulting certificate of appropriateness to replace the existing slate shingles with slate line asphalt shingles in early December of 2019. The applicant returned to HCC on July 15, 2024 with a request to demolish the existing single-family dwelling and replace it with a new residential structure composed of 4 dwelling units. At that time, the applicant was informed that Article 1714 of the Bethlehem City Ordinance defines contributing structures within the Mount Airy Neighborhood District and buildings constructed during the district's period of significance, same as South Bethlehem circa 1880 to 1950, when West Bethlehem experienced dramatic development. Because this dwelling was constructed circa 1885, it is considered contributing to the district and therefore significant. In addition, this structure exhibits a high level of historical integrity and is part of the neighborhood block, of similar 2.5-story single-family residential structures dating from roughly the same period. So its loss to demolition would be significant to the existing streetscape and also to the district. During public commentary portion of the meeting, it was also noted that Eugene Grace constructed many dwellings on his property to house various staff members and their families. This specific structure was intended for his gardener. During the ensuing discussion with the applicant, HCC expressed concerns about the proposed demolition, resulting in the loss of a historic structure that is part of a streetscape of similar detached dwellings and also intrinsically connected to the overall Eugene Grace property. The applicant's claim of undue economic hardship was questioned by HCC, considering the $300,000 needed to rehabilitate the existing structure, while the proposed replacement structure would cost approximately $2 million. In response, the HCC unanimously adopted the proposal to table any decision about the appropriateness of the proposal to replace the existing single-family dwelling with a new multifamily structure and encourage the applicant to explore design solutions that include rehabilitation of the existing historic structure in combination with an appropriate new addition. There was a request for scale elevation drawings of the current streetscape along Spring Street that would also depict the new design option that was requested by you as HCC. Upon review of the current certificate of appropriate application and supporting documentation, the applicant's proposal has not changed from the previous submittal, so discussion is warranted. According to relevant design guidelines, HCC does not recommend approval for demolition of significant structures. Rather, an evaluation of the building's significance within the district is encouraged, and confirmation is needed that all attempts to reuse the historic building have been exhausted prior to considering demolition. In response, the applicant already provided supplemental items to address the contention of the building's lack of significance within the district. Lack of was based on their observation, not my observation. If HCC determines the applicant has satisfied the issue of the building's significance and all attempts to reuse the historic structure have been exhausted, HCC may recommend demolition if the applicant will suffer resulting undue economic hardship. In anticipation, the applicant also previously provided a conditions assessment report with an estimated cost for needed repairs along with the current property appraisal report. So different from the previous applicant, they actually came to you at the first meeting with pretty much all of the documentation you typically request to help make a determination about economic hardship. Should the HCC recommend demolition after concluding the applicant will suffer undue economic hardship if required to reuse the existing structure, the proposed replacement must be assessed according to the Secretary of Interior standards concerning new construction, as well as relevant design guidelines, which encourage new construction that, quote, preserves the cohesive ambiance of the district to be compatible, sympathetic, and in contemporary construction, matches the setbacks of the adjacent buildings on the streetscape, has compatible siting, proportion, size and scale, form, materials, fenestration, roof configuration, details, and finishes, end quote. In response, the applicant has provided supplemental drawings that depict the replacement design proposal. Based on these drawings, the proposed new construction appropriately matches the setback of the adjacent structure at 1308 Spring Street, so standing in front of the building, the one immediately to the left, and is appropriately raised above the street level. So different from the previous applicant, they're also respecting the fact that these buildings also are elevated above the street, and their design proposal retains the elevation, the siding above the street. Those are all considered appropriate because they follow the existing streetscape. The existing historic structure measures approximately 26 feet wide by 40 feet deep, while the adjacent structure measures approximately 18 feet wide by 58 feet deep. The remaining block includes one dwelling at 1318 Spring Street that sits back significantly from the public right-of-way and does not contribute to the streetscape. It is subsequent is a traditional American four-square at 1322 Spring Street that aligns with the other historic structures, including this one, and is also raised above the street level. Proposed new construction measures approximately 48 feet wide by 59 feet deep. That is significantly wider than the existing historic structure. So according to the guidelines, that's not appropriate, but it closely resembles the depth of the structure, the neighboring structure, which would be appropriate. So dimensionally, it's much wider than all the others, but the depth is about the same as the others. The provided drawings indicate a soffit height of the proposed structure is approximately 23 feet, and the peak of the double gable is approximately 31 feet. And there's a central tower that has an overall height of 43 feet. The requested scale drawing of the existing streetscape depicting the adjacent historic structures has not been provided. So it's difficult for me to discern if the heights are appropriate. Because they're elevated, they're private properties. I did not enter the properties. I couldn't conduct a survey of that. So if we do take it to the next level, you did request previously, it would be really helpful to have that streetscape showing the existing and then the proposal in tandem with all the other structures. The provided drawings begin to address such design concerns as appropriate materials. That would be lap siding, asphalt roof shingles, and appropriate fenestration. I see 6/6 double hung windows. They're labeled as aluminum clad wood windows. their double height window bays, etc. Those are all defined within the relevant design guidelines as appropriate. Subsequent reviews with HCC should include product specifications and cut sheets, as well as actual samples of the proposed materials. A cursory review of the provided floor plans. We don't get into floor plans, but I do check them to see if things kind of work. And I mentioned previously, there seems to be a separation wall on each unit between bedroom 1 and a full bath that interrupts the window that you see in the floor plan. So if they do pursue further design phases, I would want to see that revised so that there's no interruption of a window with an interior wall. So only because of that it interrupts the exterior would we consider that inappropriate. So that concluded my assessment.
Okay, Sal?
Hey, Craig. So before I start, I had one quick question for Jeff. Jeff, what's the period of evaluation for buildings in this area? I think you said it earlier, and I just want to make sure I got that right.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, the ordinance defines, hold on, let me find it. Considers the district's period of significance as circa 1880 to 1950.
Okay. I'll get back to that. So, well, first of all, I appreciate the time. And we're certainly not here for your feedback and evaluation on the new design, should that come to that. We're not here for that at all, because it was our understanding that your vote back in July was because you felt the building was significant architecturally. And with all due respect with Jeff, I totally disagree with that. So the main reason that we actually came here last time was we didn't feel the building had any historic significance. And we want to back that fact up today because, and with me, by the way, is Chris Wharton. Oh, by the way, I'm Sal Verastor with Spillman Farmer Architects. This is Chris Wharton, architect with Spillman Farmer. He did some more research based on some of your feedback last time and came across something we thought was pretty interesting that we think is monumental. And we discovered actually two important aspects, and in my mind, without question, that impact and dispel the notion that the original structure is historically significant. And I'll do respect to Jeff. And this is in respect to the historic district for Mount Airy, the National Register submission, and I have it right here. And I think you might have a copy of it. I'm not sure it was sent to you, but we gave that information, but I have it here. You're welcome to look at it. We discovered that the building at 1304 Spring Street, although located on the historic map, was not considered significant and purposely not mentioned to be included among the historic structures. It's specifically in here, and Jeff can, can attest to that. So our contention is, and always has been, that this particular building, although old, is not architecturally significant and should not be considered as significant with respect to our demolition request. So on page 3 of this application, it lists 21 of 27 contributing houses that were constructed from 1910 to 1930. This building is not one of those. In fact, it's not even shown on the map. The building is not shown. So one might question, one other thing I want to add. If you look at the map on page 44 of the submission, the entire district is shown with all 27 buildings, and this one is not on there. And furthermore, the reason it's included in the district, in our opinion, and I actually talked to people who helped with the submission, is because it was on the property of the Diocese of Allentown, which is where Holy Family Senior Living is. It's actually on their property. They can't carve out a building on an existing property. If it had its own parcel, they could have carved it out and went around the property, but they couldn't do that because this building was on that larger parcel, if that makes sense. So that's one of the reasons we're here. We're here to discuss the significance, because I think that was a determining factor last time. And we're not here to argue that point, except for this significance. Lastly, And I'm a little confused, and this might be a minor point, but Jeff, I'm looking at the historic conservation for South Bethlehem and Mount Airy, and it says the time period for buildings is 1895 to 1950. And that may have changed. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this building was built in 1885. It was definitely there in 1890 because we have it's on the record. So this isn't even in the window of buildings that were supposed to be in this historic area. Minor point, still an old building, so to speak, but of architectural significance, it is not. And that's not even arguable anymore. It might be in most, listen, I'm the first one to protect older buildings, but this is not one of them. They purposely left it out for a specific reason. There was
Sal,
one
can
other
I see
thing I
the
wanted.
two documents that you've referenced, please?
Sure.
Yeah, and the guidelines. Thank you. And the other application. Thank you. That wasn't part of our application.
It should be in there.
Actually, you know what? Page 4 here. I should have tabbed this. Did I grab the right one? Is it in there?
I'm sorry, so what page of the ordinance? I have it right in front of me. I just need to, were you referencing the time frame, just to make sure I'm not misquoting?
Page 14, Jeff.
14, okay, thank you.
You're looking for the map.
What's that?
The map.
Yeah, is it in there?
Oh yeah, I just found that, thank you.
The one that doesn't have the building in it.
Oh, okay. Is it-
I think it's in the ordinance, not in the guidelines.
That's what I was referring to. This is the actual, this is off the internet.
Thank you.
Which does not show the building.
Do you want to let him see that? Does anybody else want to see the ordinance?
Let me just add while you're looking. All things that were said at our last meeting still apply. We're not going to demolish this building unless this board sees the appropriate replacement project. That's all hinged. We're not suggesting tear it down tomorrow. That's not what we're here for. We want to put something back that's as appropriate for the district, not that building and the site. That makes sense. And with your approval to all the things that you meant, that Jeff mentioned, not only in for our submission, but previously tonight.
The fact that that building is not specifically identified, I'm not sure where that stands from the legal aspect. I know certainly that that within the boundaries of the district, HCC on the south side, Mount Airy, we have treated any structure within that boundary as under our purview. If there's some discrepancy there, we'll need to get that clarified.
Craig, I agree with you except for one thing. On the South Bethlehem Historic Commission, they never identified specific buildings in quantity. In this one, they actually did that. They picked out specific buildings. By the way, this is not the only building they ignored. And they purposely pointed out those 27 buildings on the map. But respectfully, I agree with you.
Well, we're not here, doing robots. So
Sure.
respect is assumed.
Thank you.
But the Mount Airy district that we're charged with preserving is not linked to, like the ordinance is not linked to this historic document. Is that correct? Or this historic
I think this
designation?
historic document designates the Mount Airy district.
This is the district? Okay.
It's for that's specifically for Mount Airy, yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just for a minute's purpose, I couldn't quite understand what you intended. So could you
I'm
repeat that?
just questioning, and this is more for my understanding. How is this document related to the ordinance, the city's ordinance for preservation of this area of the
In the
city?
document you haven't had, is that the nomination?
United States Department of the Interior, National Register of Historic Places registration form.
Okay, thank you.
And the other issue while you're looking at that, and I guess this is a question for Jeff, and I'm not trying to be nitpicky here. If it was built before the time frame of the ordinance, does that in any way, shape, or form change your opinion?
So I'll quote from the same ordinance 2 pages prior.
Okay.
Specific demolition, Article 17, paragraph 171409A. Quote, any activity visible from the public right-of-way within the Historic Conservation District requiring the issuance of a demolition permit by the building official in accordance with the city building code shall require the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness by city council. Exceptions include accessory structures with footprints less than 100 square feet shall be exempt from the provisions of this ordinance. And that is the basis I always use for every application for demolition. Sure, it's right on the same one you had, it's just 2 pages prior. So the very first paragraph under demolition. Sure.
And I think that's probably true. It's an arguable point, but I guess what I was getting at is this architectural significance only applies to the dates. Understanding what Jeff is saying. So it can't be judged under the same criteria, because that's what I was denied, because you felt it was historically significant, but not in those dates.
For the record, nothing has been denied. It's that
Oh,
we're
I'm sorry.
in-
That's
we've
true. I'm
been
sorry,
in
Jeff.
discussion.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I feel like it was in denial. You're right.
It seems to me that the application for National Register does not necessarily to the ordinance. Identifying structures in the application is a justification. The boundaries were determined by the ordinance.
And the ordinance addresses any structure built during the defining period within that boundary as
Right.
contributing. Is that correct, Jeff?
Sorry, again, when I read from the demolition, it simply says any activity visible from the public right-of-way within the district that's above 100 square feet is to be assessed for demolition.
So we're in a discussion as to whether the gardener's house on the estate of someone significantly historic has some merit to be reviewed. I guess that's the bottom line. You know, this is not necessarily Eugene Grace's property. I mean, it's on his property.
And again, I'm,
You know, is the worker as important as the executive? You know, from a historic standpoint,
and I guess the argument is two things. One is it doesn't matter who lived there, according to your ordinance. And my argument would be that if it was considered significant when that was written, they would have noted it. Why wouldn't they? And that's why I'm here today. And so I asked Jeff, let me ask Jeff another question. If this building was built in 1960, would you consider that for demolition?
They would have to come in front of us because it says any project
Mhm.
within the district, and then they would weigh in on the contributions of that structure to the district.
Okay.
So, yeah. I was not here when the ordinance was passed. I think many of you were here, so I hesitate to imply anything of what was intended by the nomination. All I can read is from the ordinance itself. So I
Yeah,
realized there was a nomination process, but I wasn't privy, and I can imagine that process took quite a while until it came to fruition through various reviews, et cetera. But I don't pretend to assess it from a legal perspective. I'm not a lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
So the diocese owns most of that block, correct?
Say that again?
The diocese owns most of that block, right? And
Quite a bit of it. I don't know percentage-wise, Todd.
that
no idea.
parcel includes this house,
Uh,
the house
cor-
in question, correct?
Correct. It's on Holy Family Senior Living site between, I guess, Spring and Prospect, I think is the next street.
Are there any other areas of this site that have been explored for this new structure other than the site where this house stands?
On this particular block, there are none except where this is. There's the empty lot looking north. To the right of this structure, there's an empty space from there to the driveway leading in. I can't say how much is there, but there's a little bit of property there. Can they put a new building next to it? I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, I think it would help us understand that you've explored other options and maybe cross some off the list, right?
Sure.
That's kind of what I'm driving at.
Confirm that the boundary description in the ordinance is the same as the boundary description in the application. So we are talking about the same area for ordinance and the application.
Okay.
So your contention also, depending on the date, is that if it were built prior to a questionable window of 1890 to 1950, as opposed to 1880 to 1950, or whatever the start date is, that makes a difference. If it were built in 1805, does that take it out of,
I'd like to know the answer. I'm asking you, Craig, because I like to know the answer. Why, Mike?
I don't, from our standpoint at the table here, if it is prior to 1950, it's within our purview. And it may well be that it could have been 1855. It could have,
Sure.
If I might clarify, the guidelines do they're the ones that are different from the ordinance. So the guidelines have opened that window earlier, and I apologize for that
Okay.
misunderstanding. But that I do quote directly from the guidelines when I make that
So the
statement.
guidelines say 1880 to 1950, correct?
The ordinance, based on what.
So the ordinance cites like the rhythm of facades and other elements from 1895 to 1950. Isn't that what we just read there?
It cites those words, and then the guidelines kind of flesh all that out.
Okay.
Everything, the ordinance is kind of like an outline, and then the guidelines serve to fill in a lot of the blanks. So
And the ordinance references the guidelines.
the ordinance mentions there are guidelines. My assumption is
Okay.
the guidelines came after the ordinance.
Right.
I'd have to really investigate that. I don't know that. Yeah.
So where all does that leave us? It's like in limbo to some extent.
Great question.
If we have to have some legal definition that defines our parameters here. We do not at this point have them. Being the question as to whether or not it's an identified property, but it's a property or a structure within the bounds of the district. So that
Yeah, the question isn't to me whether this house should be reviewed by this board and, right, because that's, even though it's not on the National Register document, it's within the district that we're charged with reviewing all demolition within, right? The crux of the matter is,
anything over 100
Right.
square feet.
the crux of the matter is the time period. Is it 1880 to 1950 or is it 1895 to 1950? That's, because
No.
we're talking this house was built around 1880, correct?
18, yeah, it was definitely there in 1890. We think it was built, I think even Jeff in his research, 1885 circa. By the way, on, I don't know what page this is, on the submission, it said period of significance, 1895 to 1930. I don't know if that means from an evaluation standpoint or it's encompassing all structures in that. Typically, and Jeff, you would know better than I would, is that typically what they do? In other words, I always thought that if a structure was built after that time period, it was not particularly judged, but
Are you citing from the nomination?
yes, sir.
Yeah, I can only base on the ordinance itself. So anything that precedes the ordinance is an application, and we all know how things go with applications. Things can evolve. I wasn't part of that, so I hesitate to say how that whole process happened, but it went through the PHMC, the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission, in collaboration with the National Park Service, and things, in my opinion, apparently changed from the nomination till the point that it became an ordinance. So if I have to choose between what I reference the ordinance and not the application.
Right.
I also, the other question, I'm sorry, Sal. The date, I referenced the fire insurance maps, and they were done every 5 to 10 years. And the earliest map that it shows up on is the 1885 map. That's why I say circa 1885. It appears on every map subsequent, and there's only one prior to that, and it didn't show up on that one. So that's the logic I use for dating the structure, and also the architectural style fits exactly perfect with that time frame.
I think as long as it's earlier than, it's not an issue.
Earlier than what? 1880 or 1895?
Yeah, well, if it's in 1885,
I don't think that's, I don't want to argue that point. We're not here to say if it was 1885, we're off the hook. That's not what we're trying to do here. I just wanted Jeff to know that. I think we nailed that part down, but, and to make sure we had the dates correct. But, and I agree with you. Why wouldn't you? I think the ordinance should say anything before 1950, period, and end the story, right? Instead of giving 2 dates. It's my personal architectural opinion. But in this case, again, I think if you all looked at this building and compared it to all the other buildings in that area, not only the 27 or 28 that are listed, you'll find that it is not comparable in significance, in our opinion, and hence that's why we feel the way we do. That's what we're really what we're arguing. I don't know if I did or not.
an analogy that I might entertain would be if you went to Monticello and you have Jefferson's house and you have slave quarters. You can look at them both and, they aren't the same,
Correct.
but they carry somewhat the same impact because they're representative of the period and the circumstances. So that's something that we need to wrestle with here.
The difference is, Craig, is that they're being judged on who lived there and who used them as opposed to what your ordinance allows you to do. But I agree with you.
So, I don't have the answer. Do we have any further discussion? Make motions? What do we want to accomplish here? I know what you want to accomplish.
I think if we're going to make a decision based on economic hardship, we need to see that all other options have been explored, right? That's a precedent for us giving the approval to demolish a structure. And we haven't seen that yet.
And if that's the case, then we would
I would also like to suggest, and since we don't have our legal counsel, we do have legal counsel, and since they're not here tonight, I think this is one that we, before we make a decision, may want to just get legal counsel on the ordinance,
Just because
perfectly fine
the
with that.
interpretation of the dates.
and the date of the construction of this house.
Via the date
Yeah.
of the application and what the ordinance is, and just get that clear moving
Agreed.
forward.
We did table this, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we have to make a determination at this application. So at this with this meeting, if we issue a recommended denial, we also couple that with what would enable us to approve it. And following the logic of Todd's question of further exploration of other possibilities. Do we add to this building? Can we use another, chunk of property? Is there something else that could satisfy your needs? Without which, you would have economic hardship. Then I think we could, with our legal counsel, we could move towards a demolition. So if we deny, we're denying it with the idea that we need a couple more boxes checked because we can't table it.
You can't table it twice?
We can with the,
Hmm?
with the agreement of,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the agreement of the applicant, we can.
All right, well,
Well, can I make a suggestion? I'm in agreement with tabling it if you want to do your homework on your legal end. Do want to address, we struggled with two things, putting an addition on, what style do I use? Do you want me to match an insignificant architectural style? And I say that tongue in cheek. I know, there's an argument there, but
the Secretary of Interior Standards suggests that additions or new construction match size and scale,
right.
but to be differentiated by, you're not copying.
But more importantly, I think the owner doesn't see how this existing structure is useful in any way, shape, or form. That was the bigger thing. But it would be very difficult to make this building more significant. But
we can't approve demolition because the owner says, I don't know what to do with this.
I understand.
So if the applicant agrees, I'll make the motion to table upon further advice of legal counsel for interpretation of the ordinance.
And further clarifications that all options for reuse of this structure were explored.
Second,
Sure. I'm me.
and that is with the agreement of the applicant.
I will speak for the applicant, yes. How's that?
Perfect.
All right. Desiree, vote.
Thanks.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
You have all the information, Jeff?
feel like there's a very similar.
Pardon?
I think there's a very similar street. I just don't know.
Hmm.
I know maybe one block up. There's another very similar style and that sort of-
Yeah.
So I can figure out that address.
You can pull a chair up.
Yeah, it's
Table,
maybe less formal. I didn't
If you want to stand, you're welcome.
I stand and you can sit.
Might as well get comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is 1436 West Third Street.
The building description, period, style, and defining features. This references the existing structures. And previously, we assessed this project based on those two addresses, which are 14 through 16 West Third Street, just for
Okay.
clarification. So 14 West Third Street is a 3-story, 2-bay brick masonry structure with a flat roof that dates from circa 1890, while 16 through 18 West Third Street is a similar 3-story, 4-bay brick masonry structure with a flat roof that dates from circa 1905. Both are late Italianate in style and comprise the central portion of what was originally an entire block of structures along West 3rd Street constructed between 1885 and 1910, each with business locations at the entry level and residential units in the upper 2 levels. Several of these structures were designed by famed Bethlehem architect A.W. Lay. However, the architect of these specific buildings cannot be confirmed without further investigation. 14 West 3rd Street is attached to a non-contributing contemporary 6-story commercial structure to the east, while 16 through 18 West 3rd Street lost its neighbor to the west and is now an end structure. The original entry-level storefronts of both structures have been manipulated over time and now include recessed entrances and contemporary storefront windows with oversized frames and simple aprons. Both structures have similar cornices and glazed transoms above the storefronts, with mid-20th century glass blocks installed at 14 West 3rd Street and early, if not original, leaded glass installed at 16 through 18 West 3rd Street. Brick pilasters at 14 West 3rd Street frame the facade and lead to an upper decorative cornice. The second floor level has 2 very large 14/1 double-hung windows topped with segmental brick arches, while the third floor level has 3 8/1 double-hung windows topped by jack arches that support the upper decorative cornice. The simpler brick facade at 16 through 18 West 3rd Street includes 4 2/2 double-hung windows with flat masonry lintels at each floor level and terminates in a decorative upper cornice with a stepped parapet. The end wall was not constructed as an independent facade, so removal of the adjacent building has compromised its integrity and necessitated the installation of wood frame shoring as lateral bracing, which is visible along the west facade. I thought it was important to mention those because those details, those architectural details, were discussed at length with the previous applicant, and some of those elements had been integrated in their design proposal. And as we see, as we move forward, I don't sense any sense of any of those details in the current application. The applicant proposes revisions to this is taken from the agenda, I'll clarify in a moment. The applicant proposes revisions to an 8-story building previously approved in June of 2021. Facade revisions include window size and placement, the addition of a rooftop dining space, structural canopy at the lobby entrance, and other material changes. The guideline citations I used for my assessment include the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9, which I've cited the previous 2 applications, the ordinance that Mr. Evans read at the beginning of tonight's meeting, and then Historic Conservation District Design Guidelines. I will quote from several of these. Relevant sections concerning new construction are found on pages 8 through 12, which state HCC encourages new construction that, quote, preserves the cohesive ambiance of the Historic Conservation District with compatible, sympathetic, and contemporary construction matches the setbacks of the adjacent buildings on the streetscape, and has compatible siting, proportion, size and scale, form, materials, roof configuration, details, and finishes, end quote. Should also address such concerns as shape and massing, rhythm and patterns, windows and door openings, materials and textures, architectural details, as well as streetscapes. So my evaluation, the effect on the district and recommendations. The certificate of appropriateness application indicates the intent to revise various architectural details associated with the previous design solution that was presented to HCC during a series of meetings in 2020 and 2021 that ultimately resulted in an HCC motion recommending that Bethlehem City Council deny the proposal to demolish the two existing historical structures and replace them with an 88-foot high mixed-use building during the April 19, 2021 meeting of HCC. I'm saying that because the agenda implies HCC approved it, and that's not the case. HCC actually denied the application. HCC's motion was overruled by City Council on June 1st, 2021, and the applicant was subsequently granted a certificate of appropriateness in support of the proposed development project. In my assessment for today, I did include that certificate as an attachment. I also brought copies for tonight. And for the record, I'm just distributing that certificate.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.
Should that overwrite an initial?
Demolition, yeah.
Yeah, great.
In theory. We're just really looking at the project.
And since my assessment, I did go back and review a few things, and I'll call out a few changes to my draft assessment that I issued Thursday morning, just so people notice those differences. So the current application represents the first time this project returns to HCC since mid-2021. And it involves a new owner, Patriot Ventures LLC, as well as a new applicant, High Hotels Limited. The provided supplemental materials are labeled conceptual designs, so the resulting assessment is also general. A direct comparison of the previous proposal with the current conceptual design is challenging due to the small scale of the provided drawings. However, a cursory review indicates that the new proposal, and this is a change from my assessment on Thursday, inappropriately exceeds the overall dimensions of the previous design. The current design extends 96 feet high, which is 8 feet higher than the 88 feet high mixed-use development that was approved by City Council. And that's why I gave you the certificate that you have in front of you. The uppermost floor levels facing West 3rd Street were previously set back from the main facade. That was something that you as a commission discussed at length with the previous applicant. And that setback matches the setback of the adjacent existing structure on the corner. It doesn't appear to respect that feature. I'm curious during the discussion, the applicant can explain that. Again, it's very small scale drawings we're looking at here, so maybe it's there, but I couldn't see that feature that was admittedly not included or defined in the certificate you have in front of you, but was definitely a part of the discussion previously. And perhaps I'm not even privy to that discussion because these are different entities. Similarly, the floor levels above the entry level facing the greenway now angle back at a certain point, while the original design had no such setback. The original design, however, included vertical bays that helped delineate the facade and break it up so that it wasn't just one long facade. And I don't see those kind of delineations anymore, so I encourage discussion as well. The original design proposal had a taller end section that facing the convergence of West 3rd Street and the Greenway. That was the only thing that kind of popped up. In this design, there's several elements on the rooftop that we didn't have before, and that probably contributes to the 96 feet high difference versus the 88 feet high difference we had before. Such elements include rooftop elements include, they seem to match the height of the taller end section, which before it didn't. And they seem to include a usable rooftop area with a trellis system, glass railing system in between. So in my opinion, discussion is definitely warranted on that change as well. There's also a new single-story curvilinear canopy that extends out from the proposed structure facing the convergence of West 3rd Street and the Greenway. Didn't see that before, so we definitely want to talk about that. The previous design proposal mitigated the overall width along West 3rd Street by integrating vertical divisions through the use of pilasters between each storefront. It also had cornices above those storefronts that varied in height and depth to give it some delineation to help break down that overall facade. And again, it's hard to tell because these are small scale drawings, but I just couldn't see those kind of features anymore. So no separation between the storefronts and no cornices above them to help break up that facade. It seems like just to be one really long facade with no delineation anymore. And just for reference, that would mean that facing West 3rd Street, that would be one solid facade with no delineation of 204 feet 6 inches. And on the Greenway side, that would be an entire facade width of 224 feet with no delineation. And as far as I can tell, there's no existing and also no proposed design in the historic district, South Bethlehem Historic District, that has such dimensions without any kind of delineation of the horizontality of a facade of that scale. So that comment was also added since my assessment was released on Thursday, just so you're aware. There are aluminum storefronts with canvas awnings at the entry level along West 3rd Street and facing the Greenway. They are appropriate in concept, but we would need to see subsequent submittal of larger scale drawings indicating all relevant dimensions of those storefronts, material samples, and the associated specifications. Appropriate storefront panels should be center set, while glazing should be clear, not tinted, colored, or reflective. The applicant is encouraged to reference design guidelines. There are design guides specific for storefronts that complement our design guidelines. Those have helpful suggestions for such things as the apron below the storefront. Currently, it looks like they go straight down to the public right-of-way, and that's not appropriate. There should be an apron. There should be a transom above. There should be a sign band with a cornice, even about that. All those things are in those design guidelines. So maybe the next level of detail we see should incorporate those kind of things from our design guidelines. Brick masonry facades with precast sills and lintels are appropriate based on our design guidelines, pending a subsequent submittal of larger scale drawings indicating relevant dimensions. Material samples are always appreciated, and associated specifications. I do make a note that appropriate sills and lintels extend in each direction beyond the window openings. It looks like currently with the drawings, the sills and the lintels stop with the window opening, and they should extend above and below accordingly. The proposed window types and certain proposed window locations are not typical of windows found within the district, and so they are inappropriate. And that's why I specifically recalled details, and you can see on the screen, of historic windows in the district. According to the guidelines, even new projects should reference features of historic windows, the functionality, the scale, the types of divisions, those kind of things. The provided drawings do not indicate the proposed material of the windows, so discussion is warranted. Appropriate glazing is clear, not tinted, colored, or reflective. And in the past, HCC has denied vinyl windows. You have allowed aluminum covered wooden windows, and also depending on the nature of the windows, storefront style windows, but we would need clarification from the applicant. Appropriate placement of entry-level storefront should align with the bays of the windows above. Because I don't have true front elevations, it's a little bit hard, but it looks like the facade facing West 3rd Street, those storefronts seem to align either centered or left and right justified to the windows above. So that would be appropriate. The storefronts on the Greenway, however, do not align with the windows above. They're not, many of them are not either centered or justified left or right with the windows above. So that would be considered inappropriate based on our guidelines. The provided drawings depict a series of precast bands, it's called, and cornice moldings. More details along with material samples and scale drawings would be needed before any kind of appropriateness could be determined. The provided drawings also propose an exterior insulation finish system, or EIFS, as a cladding for select facade elements, and our design guidelines identify EIFS as inappropriate within the district. So the applicant will be requested to find an alternative yet appropriate facade cladding to replace the proposed EIFS. The provided drawings imply an exterior building signage. I could not discern an indication of exterior illumination. Admittedly, it's very early, so I'm not saying that that's a criticism. It's just a mention that future applications for signage and light fixtures, the applicant is strongly encouraged to reference design guidelines. We have a set of guidelines specific solely for signage. And then I think in either signage or storefronts, there's references to appropriate illumination. So before we see anything specific or discuss, I encourage the applicant to review those and then call those out specifically in a subsequent submission.
Is that everything, Jeff? If you would give us your names and then respond to the commentary, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. My name is Tom Schlegel. I'm an attorney at Fitzpatrick, Lenson, Buba. We're the law firm working on this project with High Hotels. With me is JJ Fives from High Group. Also, Tony Seiss and Frank Fox are sitting behind me, also from High Group. JJ is going to handle the bulk of our overview on the project.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I'll defer to Frank and Tony. Tony's with High Real Estate Group. Frank is our lead architect with Greenfield Architects. I'm a representative and speaking on behalf of High Hotels. So if it makes sense, we can directly address the comments here, or we can move forward, or I could speak a little bit more about the hotel, the opportunity, what it's going to be, if that's helpful
I
for
think that's appropriate.
the understanding.
Introduce us to the project basically. And
Yeah.
then you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So just a little bit about us, High Hotels. We've been an owner, operator, and developer of primarily select service hotels for the last 35 years. We do have an existing strong presence in the Lehigh Valley. We built the Spring Hill Suites down in Center Valley back in 2017. Continue to operate that as part of our portfolio. And recently, late last year, we purchased the Home2 True dual brand up in Easton. So really familiar with the area. We operate here. We have a lot of really good people, co-workers currently in the market. And yeah, we're excited to present this as the newest addition in our portfolio. So as Jeff mentioned, we're working to amend the seller's existing approved land development plan as multifamily and change the use to hotel. So the hotel itself now is a 141 guest room Tempo by Hilton. So Tempo is a new brand that Hilton introduced back in 2022 as a select service lifestyle brand. There are currently 4 open and operating throughout the country. So Times Square, Nashville, Louisville, and Raleigh, North Carolina. And there's another 60 or so signed up right now. So the brand is moving forward with some velocity. So for context, Tempo was created to really compete one-to-one with AC on the Marriott side. So if you're not familiar, With AC in recent years, it's really become a top two, if not the most popular brand among Marriott's 30 plus brands, and Tempo maintains a lot of the same features. So, restaurant and bar in the lobby with paid breakfast and dinner, expanded fitness center, higher end finishes in the guest rooms and the public space. And while not required, there's usually some type of rooftop element that is separate from the brand mandated food and beverage program, which will be the case here. So I'll let Tony and Frank kind of help me out on the similarities in terms of the previously approved plan with respect to facade design, building materials, et cetera. But I think it's important to hear why this project's not only going to be a great amenity for the community, but also a much needed amenity for not just South Bethlehem, but for all of downtown Bethlehem as a whole. So we talk a lot about highest and best use of the sites that we analyze and the demand within the market to support it. So in terms of lodging options currently in downtown Bethlehem and what constitutes downtown Bethlehem proper and across the river in South Bethlehem, there are currently no Marriott or Hilton branded options right now. And why that's important is Bethlehem, particularly South Bethlehem, in our view, maintains the most diverse mix of demand generators relative to the rest of the Lehigh Valley. And it brings a lot of travelers here. The mix of demand in South Bethlehem in particular brings a mix of travelers here that are presumably loyal to one of those two parent companies, Marriott or Hilton, in terms of where they stay. So you look at the corporate demand, the B. Brauns of the world, the Lutrons, the Olympuses, the Air Products, all the corporate accounts that we are familiar with selling. You look at on the leisure side, Arts Quest and all the great things that they're doing year in, year out with at Steel Stacks with Music Fest, Christmas City. I'm sure their capacity is only going to ramp up, once they're in their new HQ across the street from us. Wind Creek, $160 million expansion, 60,000 square feet of new convention space to bring, new convention business directly to the area. Obviously, we're at the doorstep of Lehigh, St. Luke's Hospital, less than a mile away. So there's really this great mix of demand, bringing folks to the area who are not necessarily staying in the area because of that lack of branded lodging options and the loyalty that I mentioned. So less people are staying here, spending money at restaurants, shops, etc. People like to utilize their points, and they'll go out of their way to do so if they can. So, that's the economic piece of why we feel there's a need here. In terms of amenity for the public and local residents, we'll talk about it more as we go through it, but we are working through a rooftop bar concept that will be a pretty unique type of space for South Bethlehem. We as a company have experience executing a similar type of space in downtown Lancaster at our full service Marriott and Convention Center, which is a 12-story historically designated building in itself. A couple of years ago, we added a new tower that had 100 new guest rooms and then a rooftop bar on top of it, the Exchange. And that's really become a popular destination. And it's kind of one of those amenities that we feel sets Lancaster apart in terms of other tertiary cities.
Go through a architectural review board in Lancaster.
That's correct. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Actually, the original tower is, I'll take a step back. The original building that occupied the hotel site was a Watt and Shan building, which was a really noted Lancaster department store, a lot of history. We preserved the facade of that building. And the Historical Review Board allowed us to construct a 19-story tower, sort of enveloped within that Beaux-Arts facade that had at many times been discussed to be demolished. We preserved it, strengthened it, preserved it. It's gorgeous, and it encapsulates that 19-story tower that has about 300 guest rooms. That was constructed in 2007 to 2009, and it's connected to the Lancaster County Convention Center. As JJ mentioned, in 2019, we opened the East Tower, which is a 12-story, 110 guest room addition, and that has the rooftop exchange on it, on the 12th floor. So we've got 19 stepping down to 12, and the 19 is framed by that Beaux-Arts facade of the Wat and Shan. But absolutely all of it is in a historic district. All of it was subject to review.
And one other interrupting question, since I
Please.
interrupted your presentation. What is your plan for parking?
Yeah, we're going to utilize the garage directly behind us. I already talked. Steve Fernstrom and I at Bethlehem Parking Authority have had multiple conversations of leasing the appropriate amount of spaces in that garage, and then improving. Working with the city. I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's not finalized yet. It's highly conceptual, but the greenway improvements that are going to happen. And that are catalyzed by this project. We're going to work to improve that in a way where there is pedestrian access for guests to basically once they drop off their bags or check in, pull around, park in the garage, and then come across the greenway to the side vestibule, or go around to the front door at the point of the triangle. But we're going to utilize the garage
Okay.
for parking.
Those were the interrupting questions.
Okay.
I had at this point.
I think if you could talk a little bit about the exterior design,
Yeah.
that'd be great. We appreciate that.
Well,
Thank you.
Again, just to pick up what Jeff was saying, yeah, the drawings are somewhat small in scale, so a lot more detail will be needed to convey that. The design in general is keeping in tune with the tripartite design of the original building. It has a base, it has a middle section, it has a crown, the cornice. The materials are somewhat similar in that we have brick masonry and a lot of the cast stone elements and features. We're using a larger based masonry element at the base of the building that will have detail. There is a rhythm with the windows as we're going along 3rd Street. That again, as Jeff noted, we are picking up with the windows up above within the hotel rooms. There are pier elements that, again, where the storefront between it, and of course the storefront would be set back from those piers. There would be lighting on the piers at the base of the building, as well as the canopies that Jeff had noted. Again, there's a lot of things that have to be discussed that, again, aren't shown or depicted because of the small scale. But I think the bigger overriding issue that Jeff had mentioned was the height. What's really driving the height to be above the 88 feet is the rooftop bar and kind of small restaurant per se. That there may be some hand food, finger foods that are served up there. So what's driving that additional height is having that element. Even that noted, one of the stair towers would probably have to go up anyway from a code perspective. For even if there was nothing occupying the roof, we'd have to take a stair tower higher. I believe the top roof element right now is approximately 81 feet. What's given it the additional height then is the height for the structure, and of course taking at least one stair tower up. But we take both stair towers up because once the rooftop is occupied, we'll need 2 ways off. Again, that's driving the height. The height of the main corner element at the triangle. We've taken that up higher as well as to possibly use that to help screen rooftop equipment that may be up there. Some other things to talk about with the setbacks, the side of the building is almost a triangle. Of course, the tip's cut off. What's driving maximizing the footprint, because it's really going to the property lines, is just the requirements based upon the hotelier. With the program requirements for that size hotel and what we're doing with the number of rooms, it's driving what's happening on the first floor. So the first floor plate up to the second floor is really built out to the property line. What happens up above is, so we have a triangular form, but what happens up above, the rooms take on a scale, really an L configuration to maximize the number of rooms that are needed for the project. So to pick up on Jeff's comments, the windows above with the rooms don't have any real direct correlation on the backside, on the Greenway side, don't have any direct correlation to what's happening at the base of the building. Of course, the base of the building is all of the public functions. There's a bar, there's a restaurant, public amenities, meeting rooms of that nature. Of course, back of house items that's required for the hotel as well. What we did do is try to, using the rooms, is break up the facade above the first floor. So there's some articulation and undulation within the front facade. So it's just not one sheer wall going up and across. So there's some shadow line and articulation that will occur with those setbacks of those other rooms. Again, what we're trying to do also is delineate with the cast stone accent bands, the lintels and sills of the windows, as well as some articulation within the floor areas as we delineate the floor lines with cast stones. There'll also be some cornice pieces at the top parapets as well. I think I was trying to pick up a lot of points Jeff was making real quickly here, so I may not hit them all. I think one of the other elements he noted is the portico share. We're using the curved structure as sort of the drop off, because that would be the main hotel drop off if somebody needs to drop off luggage or additional people. So the thought was that element would be used to at least cover one or two cars. So at least one could pull up and park, run in, another one could pull up behind it as well. The idea is we would still use the same large format masonry units sort of as a base of the columns of the portico share. We'd probably wrap whatever structure it is with a metal panel type system. And again, the ceiling soffit of the portico share would also be in effect a metal panel feature. We were using ephes at the topmost floors, again, to give it a different delineation, but it's so far up. The thought was using the ephes at that location. Break it up as though it's a reveal system, or it could be almost like a precast piece. But the thought was, what's nice with the ephes is that high, it can look good with a certain finish on it. And it also provides a real good insulation factor at that location. I'm trying to think some other points here. Initially, I think the windows we were using within the rooms themselves were maximized to meet with some of the hotel standards. So that was really setting the proportions of the windows with the facade. What else do I have here? So again, there's going to be probably another level of detail as we get into this. Again, this is very conceptual. We acknowledge that, but there's probably going to be another level of detail to move into. But did I pick up a lot of your points, Jeff? Is there anything else that we need to address?
There is. And this has been a personal axe for me to grind for quite a while here, and it has to do with the two buildings that are still standing there. At one point with the prior applicant, we talked about the effort to salvage, if not the buildings, at least the facades. And if it's not feasible, and it may not be, they may be well beyond that at this point.
Sounds like they've got some experience doing that, though.
But you can appreciate how that element that is part of the rhythm of the street, or had been, has some significance to us going forward. So if there were an opportunity to pick up the rhythm and some of the feeling of those facades in that stretch along 3rd Street, that'd be a real good thing.
Mm-hmm.
they've unfortunately gone into demolition by neglect, and we haven't been able to stem that. But if we can pay some homage to the fact that they were significant parts of the commercial community, it would be really helpful in that long front there. So just tossing that out there for you to think about.
But I don't think the demolition of those is not up for discussion tonight, right? I mean, that's kind of a foregone conclusion,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That COA has been approved.
City overruling the.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But we're talking about
Right.
you're saying they could influence the architecture of the new hotel.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I wasn't implying that there should be a connection to demolition.
Is the rooftop deck or the rooftop area set back at all? Like when I mean back, I mean away from the exterior of the structure, the sides,
Yes, it is.
like 10 feet.
Yeah, we probably haven't dimensioned it yet, but that could easily be set back 10 feet.
Our other experience with rooftop,
I didn't catch what, for minutes purposes, which portion were you asking about?
Oh, I was asking about the rooftop
Okay.
portion. Is it set back off of the edge of the?
Yeah, the back piece that's facing the greenway, of course, the elevator shafts are in the back. So when you come up, you'll have that elevator lobby that's not set back. But as you get to the front along 3rd Street, the design could easily set back whatever outdoor area there is, and I believe our initial concept didn't even have the restaurant piece, indoor piece coming out that far. It would be more of an external. There may be some sort of pergola trellis effect that will be up there that would set out over the outdoor dining area. And then, of course, there would be an enclosed piece that is back further that could be used all year long as well.
So that just so you understand where the setback comes from, I think this board is more comfortable with a taller structure if the upper levels are set back from the
edge.
facade to kind of give the effect of a lower scale structure along the street.
that's been our effort. With
Yeah.
the height of buildings has been a challenge. And so we have, as Todd mentioned, been comfortable suggesting setbacks. And if you reference the whatever 3.0 neighborhood context of your sheets, you'll notice that there are setbacks and mansards and, colorings that help.
Reduce the scale of the building along the street.
Yeah, the sight lines.
Not to put words in your mouth, but that's what you're driving at, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's where I was going. And the problem we've had in some cases is that setback stuff has been ignored.
Is it appropriate that at the street level we would keep the base public of the building out along the streetscape as it
Yes.
is?
That
But what you're saying then is pulling back once we get above the 1st floor level, pull back.
What we're saying is pull back the top floor
At the top.
or
Top floor.
or maybe the top 2 floors or something to that effect.
Okay.
Or even just differentiate them as a mansard or some other material that kind of gives the illusion that it's a shorter building than it
and we
is.
recognize that it's an illusion, but it helps in the context of the vernacular along the street.
I think your solution where you're holding the street edge at the 1st floor is entirely appropriate. I'd like to see a little bit more differentiation in the massing above that 1st floor. So you have like 1, 2, 3, I think, primary chunks, right, with 2 setbacks. Can you develop that a little further so there's more and narrower setbacks to that tower?
Very good. What was the thought in regard to, how areas of the facade right now are stepping back? Did you notice that within the, is that?
Oh yeah, no, I
Okay.
that's what I'm saying. I think that that's entirely appropriate.
Okay.
But you say you can see if you're looking at the upper level floor plans, your setbacks, I guess those are the queen rooms, right? Or the king rooms.
The king room's correct.
You have the first that's toward the point of the building is about 30 feet wide.
Yes.
But then the second one further down the building is 50 feet wide. I
Right.
think the 30-foot wides kind of recess is a little bit more successful than the 50. So is there a way to divide that 50 into two recesses and kind of break
Mhm.
up the facade a little more?
Mhm, mhm.
I'm just throwing out suggestions.
No, that's, yeah. that-
I know that there's probably constructability
There
issues with that,
room
yeah.
size issues that were
Sure.
mandated by the brands. There's
Yep.
the ratio of the different room types. There's a lot of factors that go into
Yep.
that. I can tell you on a tight site like this, we have worked hard to create as much interest as we can in the facade of the building and the building design itself. I feel pretty good about what's on the table. I know, I respect your purview. I would say just at the rooftop, I do want to be clear, at the rooftop above 81 feet, at the rooftop bar, there will be a significant step back from the edge of that parapet. The vision there is for there to be a really nice, welcoming outdoor patio space, which has been very successful for us in Lancaster, and we think would be great for your community here, a real great community asset. So you would have a significant step back from the
Yeah, that's true.
The parapet at that top roof area. So that 15 feet that we're talking about above the 81st foot, you've got a significant setback. I just wanted to make that
Right.
clear.
I think the comment with bricking up the front facade with possibly moving some of the king rooms and have more of an articulation, I think is possible. What is tough though is above is if you look at the typical room floor plan, is setting back any further than what's shown.
No, that's not what I'm asking.
Okay.
Don't
Okay.
hear me
Well,
wrong. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, you have like probably 4 feet
Correct.
differentiation there.
Yes.
That is satisfactory to me.
Okay. Very good.
But you could maybe even call some more or articulate the differentiation between the two planes a little bit more by altering the material on
Mhm.
that step back portion. Just throwing out a suggestion again.
Okay.
Maybe it's a different brick color or
Okay. Yeah, we actually did look at that as well. Okay, well that answers that. Yeah, because it'd be very difficult. What happens then is if we start pulling it back any further, it starts eliminating the rooms behind. And
not what I'm
yeah,
that's
that
not
would.
what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Yeah, at all. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, very good.
I have some more architectural comments if you want me
Yes,
to
no,
roll,
yeah,
roll
please.
through them. First of all, Tempo there's a flag standard now for this brand, right? I did a
Yes.
quick Google search on my phone here as we're talking. It seems to me like this deviates quite a bit from that
Mhm.
flag. Is that a correct statement?
Well, in one sense, it's a boutique type brand, but there's a lot of program areas that are critical. So it doesn't necessarily get into any specific standards of this is what the hotel has to look like.
I got you.
You know, a lot
Okay.
of times there's an aesthetic
Good.
look at, hey, this designates this type of brand, and there's certain key elements with it. That's really left up to the hoteliers to take it in a certain direction to the locality and the contextual nature of
That's
where
fantastic.
it may be going.
Okay, good.
I don't know. I'll just add to that a little bit. I confirmed with our development rep. So they do a lot of work within historical districts. So the interior
Is where you find the branding, right? But the exterior is more, right. More, you have a little more freedom. That's
More of
great.
a conversation with the
Yeah.
community than it is.
Just real quick, the kitchen along Third Street there's a little bit of a concern there on my end, having that backed up to what should be an active sidewalk. And I think our zoning, we want to see some active space along the street and along the sidewalk. So that's a separate issue that zoning will handle, but just a quick comment there. I know you've got a lot of program on the first floor and not a lot that would be kind of active public space, but just take that as a a potential concern.
Waste removal.
And then the delivery, you've got that. I mean, I don't know how else you would get deliveries to this site, but it's worth talking about. And I think that the presence of that on 3rd Street would be something that we'd be keyed into and want to discuss in great detail. So the other thing is the tower element. If you look at your rendering of the 3rd Street perspective looking west, you can see that that's kind of a narrow element. Feels like a little bit Disney World, you know what I mean? Because there's no mass to that tower from the western side. So if you could return that wall, I think that would help architecturally, return that wall across the roof. I think that would help architecturally.
What,
Saying like in here.
I'm looking on page 2,
mhm.
the upper left-hand rendering.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes.
Yep. I think Jeff talked about the window proportions a little bit. I think that if you could make them feel a little bit more vertical,
Mhm.
instead of doing 1 vertical mullion, maybe there's 2. So each of the sections feels a little bit more vertical. That would help. The HVAC unit louvers, we would also, I think, want to review those pretty carefully. I mean, it'd be ideal in my mind if we could get them off the facade. I understand that there's some functionality and that the HVAC system you put in these rooms, that's the easiest solution. But
Yeah, it's a
if
vertical.
we can't take those and put them internal to the rooms,
Yeah,
then we'd want to look at those louvers very carefully and make sure
Yeah.
that they're
Mhm.
architecturally attractive.
Sure.
And maybe even integrated into some kind of vertical architectural element.
Right. Yeah, it is a vertical, a VTAC unit that's
Right.
inside the room that splits it up. So it will, it will have units for the heat exhausting.
I mean, I think you can also put them in a closet internal to the room, right, and get outside air through a chase or whatever. But I'm just calling to your attention.
Right,
that
yeah, that's
we'll want to
some-
look at those louvers pretty carefully.
Okay. Point well noted.
To me, I'm not totally uncomfortable with the ephes at the upper level. I think we'd want to carefully scrutinize that finish
Mhm.
and make sure, and then control joints and all that, and make sure we're making it look as attractive as possible.
As long as possible.
Correct. The canopy looks like it's glass in the renderings. I think you said it'd be more solid in your narrative.
Be solid, yeah, a metal.
And the only other question I had was the arrival, but that was answered. So other than that, looks like a nice project. I'm excited to see more.
Nothing to vote on. Is it?
No, that's what I was going to say. So what is the ask for tonight?
Well, I think again, from an architectural standpoint, it was to get feedback, which was well done. I appreciate that because some very good points. So from my perspective, that was my goal. I don't know if
You
Tony
got
and
feedback.
Jay, we got feedback. I don't know if Tony and JJ have any other comments of what their intentions
And
were.
I think we fully expected a dialogue with you, and we appreciate the feedback. So we'll take this under advisement. We'll take a look at relook again at our plans, and I think resubmit with the idea of having another meeting with you, and hopefully getting this process to a conclusion as speedily as we can. I think, one thing I would say, again, Tony Seitz, I didn't properly introduce myself with High Real Estate Group. You've heard from our architect, Frank Fox, who's president of Greenfield Architects. And, I think JJ I don't want to belabor this meeting any more than we need to. I think JJ did a great job introducing High Hotels and why we're interested here. I would only note that I'm not sure how familiar you are with the High companies headquartered in Lancaster, but we've been around for over 100 years. We're owned by a foundation, by the High Foundation. All of the returns of High investments go back into the communities that we work in, that we operate in. High Foundation, I think, even has a larger scale than just our focus of operations, but it's really a unique company. It's 2,000 employees strong in Lancaster, and we are divided between High Real Estate Group, of which High Hotels is a part, and High Industries, which is structural steel, concrete, precast concrete. We do major public works projects for the Commonwealth and for private entities, through High Industries, through steel and concrete, and of course at High Real Estate Group, we develop and own our own real estate assets. That's a real broad brush overview to who we are, but I did want to assure you we're long-term holders. If you know anything about us and how we build and how we operate, we're there for the long haul. Take a lot of pride in what we build, and we try to get it right. And we think this is a great market, as JJ said, and we're looking to hopefully deliver a great project here. And
Yep.
really appreciate your consideration, and we'll be back.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
thank you.
personally thrilled that you guys are part of this project. I think that'll make it successful.
Thank you, Todd.
Darlene,
Public comment.
public comment.
Public comment, I know. You're not used to public comment at these meetings, I know.
We going limited to 3 minutes?
Darlene Heller, Director of Planning and Zoning for the City of Bethlehem. So I don't know that there's anything additional that I can say, but I do just want to say from the perspective of the city and the Planning and Zoning Office that we are pleased to see this project moving forward. They've just talked about the work that they've done. I will say I've stayed in, I've visited the project they completed in Lancaster, and it's beautiful. I've never been to Louisville, Kentucky, but we feel very confident. We're pleased to be able to work with this organization, and I think it's really key that we have the opportunity for another hotel on the south side. It also helps with the North Street Garage. You asked about parking. There are changes that are occurring to the facade. I think that one that I will just point out is that along the Greenway side, there is not, the facade line is changing on the upper floors. And we thought that that was actually an improvement to allow some more open space to the Greenway. We did think that that was advantageous. We will be moving ahead with completion of that portion of the Greenway as this construction draws to completion. So it's really going to finish off that block in just a wonderful way. I think it'll be very, very impactful to the south side. Just wanted to put my 2 cents in. That's all. Thanks. And thanks for the hard work that you do. I know that you have a lot of challenging cases. Nobody ever comes here to say that, but thank you. Thanks for your hard work.
I guess there's no motion to make
Nothing
here,
else,
right?
huh?
No, you guys will be back.
Yeah, we're not going to table it or anything. We'll just let it sit.
Assuming that this is fact finding on
Yes.
both our parts and the goal.
If you could please capture all 4 of your names on the list just for
Absolutely.
minute purposes. Thank you. And please print so I can read the names.
And one last question. Will we get a copy of Jeff's comments? Okay, very good.
Yep, sure. Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn then.
We need approval.
Nope, approval minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Minutes.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Second, the motion to adjourn.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, everybody have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.